All right. We've already got one trade already made today. You guys heard that earlier. Buying Sam Pittman in the pre-market. We had a little conversation about him getting another year from his athletic director. So that one's already in the books. And you'll notice this time of year, it's dwindling down. Reserves are getting tight. There's probably going to be more sells than there are buys, but I do have some of both for you. All right. We talked about Chip Kelly. You know what I'm selling? I already sold him once this year. I'm adding to the sell. I'm selling USC, and I'm getting out in front of this early. I'm selling Lincoln Riley's future at USC. I think it is very much up in question whether he returns next year. There is a lot of rumblings. Lincoln Riley could be behind the scenes working on a package deal with Caleb Williams to the NFL, quickly realizing, you know what? I thought I was going to come here. I thought it was going to be a Pac-12 that looked like the way it has for the past 100 years. Wait a second. We're going to have to travel across the country. Caleb Williams is going to NFL. Things look completely different. The path to the national title didn't get easier. It got harder since you left Oklahoma. I am selling Lincoln Riley's future as the head coach for the USC Trojans. I don't think it is that wild to do. The question I have, which NFL team will take him, and Caleb Williams, can he have enough leverage to work out that package deal that Lincoln Riley is indeed looking for? I have another sell for you. We just talked about this. I am selling Penn State's future as the third best team in the Big Ten. I just said it. I think they're incredibly overrated. Not for the future of where they're going to be in there, but whether they're going to be the third best team. I think the days of going 10-2 are done when they've been able to go and beat up everybody else that's not named Michigan and Ohio State. Drew Aller, man, came in with so much hype and expectations, continues to underwhelm with what he's able to do. The 10-2 years are done. Welcome to 9-3, 8-4 for the Penn State Nittany Lions there. Tom, you going to counter? You going to fade that?
I would fade that. I do think Oregon steps in and is better than Penn State right away. That I will not argue against. I just think you are.
And Michigan?
Wait, what?
And Michigan, right?
Oregon better than Michigan?
I expect Oregon to come in and be better than Michigan. Yeah, I think the roster building behind the scenes Oregon's doing is better than what Michigan is doing. That's why I think Harbaugh.
Talk about some stock buying. I've been hearing it out of Bud's corner. Boys buying up duck eggs left and right.
I'm going to push back that Oregon will be in better shape than a Michigan team that might be on the verge of its third straight conference title and playoff berth. But I'll let you think that if you want. Penn State. I think, Danny, you're overreacting to Penn State losing to Michigan and Ohio State. If you've watched Penn State against anybody else that's played on its schedule this year, it has been much better than every opponent it's faced. I still think it's pretty good. I just think they have an Ohio State and Michigan problem, which most teams in the country are going to have.
I think the gap between Michigan, Ohio State, and everybody else in the big – I think the gap between Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State is like this big, and then there's a gap between Penn State and everybody else is like this big, and that's where those teams are going to plug in right on that playing field with Penn State. And I think that hurts them over the long haul. And, man, do they have a search take place to get the coordinators, because it's not going to be the dudes that were calling them last week filling in for Mike Yurcich and Drew Aller. They got to do some confidence building with him, because it is completely wrecked there for him. All right, so at Penn State, I'm selling. You know who else I'm selling? Now, this is more of a national championship picture, because I picked Michigan to win the national championship. You know who I'm selling? JJ McCarthy and his ability to win a national title with the Michigan Wolverines. Notice this over the weekend as I'm watching him trying to close out the game. He had one interception in the red zone. The play before he threw the interception, there was a ball that should have been picked off. Then after the interception, they've got a wide open receiver running, which would have been like the closeout touchdown to really start to separate. He misses a wide open receiver down the field, allows Maryland to hang around. Noticing a trend, and I hate that this is a thing, because I don't want to be like I'm just trolling, but I do think it is worth noticing that TCU, who referenced that they knew that they did have the signals, mixed them up during the playoffs. They picked him off twice for 2 pick sixes, and the last 2 weeks since they have not had the signals, it has not been pretty. Didn't have to run it the whole time. The second half, it was only 6 of 7 or something like that. Did not throw for much, and this past weekend, the stats were not great. I know it's not all about statistics, but 12 of 23, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, 141 against Maryland, who most teams have been having their way with. I think it's a sign for alarm. So I still like Michigan. I might lean toward them next week, but this season has been about, can you get over that hump? And they benched Cade McNamara to go in favor of JJ McCarthy. I don't know if he's the guy that's going to be able to take them all the way home to where they want to go.
McCarthy got a little bit banged up in that game.
Yeah.
Maybe something to take into consideration and certainly to factor into your handicap. And the fact that the past game, they didn't need it against Penn State in the second half, but to see it 2 weeks in a row now, it hasn't quite been operating on the same level. That was one takeaway early in the season. We're like, holy crap, Michigan is just throwing the ball down the field, like and not just off play action, but really baking in opportunities for JJ McCarthy. I mean, Tom, why do you think that's gone away? Is that a McCarthy thing, or what's the offense in general because of the offensive line injuries where he doesn't have as much time? You know, what are the factors that are contributing to a passing attack that is looking much less fruitful than it was at the beginning of the year?
I'm not going to argue that JJ McCarthy had a good game against Maryland, because JJ McCarthy did not have a good game against Maryland. He did miss one throw late in the game that could have clinched it. But JJ McCarthy was banged up playing behind an offensive line that was down 2 guys and also without his leading receiver in that game, a week ahead of Ohio State and a week after playing Penn State. I think that we might be overreacting a little bit to the one game, considering how well he's played in every single other game this season. So, yeah, I mean, everybody has bad games. Like, I'm not going to sit there. I don't totally disagree with your JJ McCarthy might not be good enough to win a national title. I won't push back on that because that's a perfectly reasonable opinion. I do think we're overreacting to one game a little bit, and I don't think he played poorly against Penn State. He was 7 of 8. They just didn't throw the ball. Like, they didn't have to. Right.
He played awesome in those games leading up when they knew the signals and knew the perfect play calls to dial up.
They've known the signals. Like, everybody's known this. Like, this investigation has been going on for a while. Like, it has not. The Connor Stallion stuff started forever ago, and they were still tearing everybody up. The only problem that Michigan had was they couldn't block Penn State nearly as well last week as they could these other teams, because Penn State's got a monster defense, and they were down a couple offensive linemen against Maryland. Like, I don't know. I
mean, in Michigan's offense,
even if we want to play that. Sorry, go ahead, Chip.
Well, Michigan's offense isn't doing the, like, run to the line of scrimmage, check with me, look to the sideline. I mean, they kind of do their thing.
Yeah.
Like they seem to be in the past the chalk game. Michigan's offense seems to, here's what we're going to do. See if you can stop it, more than, all right, let's see exactly what look you're in. Let's try to figure out what you're going to be doing and then put in a counter at the last second to be able to come up with the perfect play call. That, my dumb eyes, my uneducated eyes, have not seen that sort of be in the way that Michigan's offense handles its business.
He also like, it doesn't, the idea that like they've all of a sudden started sucking when they didn't have the signals. They also played Purdue and Michigan State after the investigation came out. Those teams definitely had time to change their signs, and he crushed them.
But you don't need signs against them.
But you don't need signs against Maryland. Maryland's the same level as Michigan State or Purdue, roughly. I mean, like, they're not good. So
we'll see.
He has not taken the next step against better competition, is really fair to say, I think. Like, we knew if his first read was open, he can throw it. You know, does he have that Tyler Van Dyke in him where it's got to be read, you know, kind of open for him and read it, or can he actually get to the progressions and go? We'll see.
And I will say, too, like last year, and I talked about this on Saturday night, the week before the Ohio State game, Michigan nearly lost to Illinois. Like, they're not putting anything on tape in that game. They don't want to give Ohio State any idea of what they're doing. And also, JJ McCarthy before that was playing much worse before that Illinois game. And then they came out for the Ohio State game and, you know, hit a bunch of bombs. Like, I don't know that Michigan is going to beat Ohio State, because I do think in the last couple of weeks, even against what you would consider, you know, lesser competition, Ohio State has really started to click on offense, and they've gotten a lot healthier on offense. And I think that is something that cannot be overlooked or overstated. They are starting to look more like the Ohio State team you expect. So if Ohio State beats Michigan this week, I'm not going to be like shocked or in awe of it happening. No, but I'm also not going to think it's because of signals or because of JJ McCarthy. I just think it's probably going to be because Ohio State's also a very good team.
Ohio State's doing what Michigan did to those teams earlier. Like they're
Yeah.
starting to get their style points now. Michigan just got to load them up the first 6 or 7 weeks of the season.
I think Ohio State is also they've reached the acceptance phase with McCord, and they know they're just having to scheme everything open for him, and they're doing a nice job of it. Like they're like, okay, you know what, this guy's not a good quarterback. Can he be a serviceable to decent quarterback and get the ball to our elite weapons? Henderson's also looking a hell of a lot better, by the way. Like I remember back when we had Barton and Bud, Henderson coming out of high school was a ridiculous prospect. I was like, guys, he would play for Ohio State like right now, and I feel like he has never been healthy. And like that was probably hyperbole and a hot take to think the 18-year-old, but we do see it with 18-year-old running backs, and now he's out there looking like Adrian Peterson. So like that's, I mean, having him hit the health stride at the right time might be really beneficial for Ohio State.
Yeah, because now defenses actually have to respect the run game because they really didn't have to for the first couple months of the season. And also that offensive line, which early in the year was pretty like it wasn't exactly exciting. They're figuring things out. They're kind of gelling as a unit, and they're playing better overall too. So like Ohio State right now is just getting better everywhere you look.
I am a couple more trades to make. I'm buying. So I think we might have all sold Washington too soon as, oh, Oregon's just going to beat them in a rematch. I still like Oregon. I still get why they're favored, but Washington just keeps winning. And I thought their defense stepped up in a huge way on the road. I think great teams figure out ways to win games in tough environments when the conditions aren't great. That's exactly what Washington did. They were able to at least contain Damian Martinez. They did pick off DJ twice. I'm starting to think that Washington, maybe we're underestimating the Washington Huskies as the undefeated Pac-12 champ and giving a little bit too much credit to Oregon.
I like that.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I think we'll have our chance because I think we're going to see them in the Pac-12 championship game. But I just look at it and I'm like, man, we're kind of, I think we rode off because I think everyone after we watched them beat Oregon, we're all like, oh, well, Oregon was a better team. And at some point you have to recognize what they did on the field. And so I'm starting to buy back some of that. We already know I got Michael Penix. I have Jaden Daniels. I'm holding Bo Nix. 3 Heisman Trophy stocks that I am holding. I've got Carson Beck, who is the only other candidate that I would consider adding to at 50-1 odds. I actually think it's incredible value to go ahead and snatch up some Carson Beck now. He has been phenomenal. I think he's going to have another huge stat game. And then he's going to have the opportunity in the SEC championship game that the entire country is going to be watching. I think there's an outstanding chance. I am not sold that Bama's defense is just fixed. I think he could have a huge day against Bama, and I think he could win it. And meanwhile, I get Jaden Daniels has been phenomenal. He's not in the national championship hunt. I think he could finish second. And Bo Nix, Michael Penix, they still have tough games. Both of them have left. And then against each other, what if they underwhelm? What if it's a defensive game? What if both of them struggle somewhat and Carson Beck lights it up? I think at 51, the Georgia quarterback could come in and steal this whole thing.
I'm going to short sell that one. I have Carson Beck at 200-1 from like about a month ago, and we talked about it on the show a lot. This is moving the wrong direction. I think Georgia's winning so easily in these games that he's not getting the credit he deserves. This was 25-1 before the weekend, and it doubled. So I
didn't know that.
Yeah, I needed
those dang straw polls.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's lacking the moment is what he's lacking.
Basically, yeah. Because they haven't had close games except for the Auburn game.
Right.
You know that Georgia, their average spread in their road games this year is 20 points.
Man,
that makes sense.
I mean, but Vandy, Georgia Tech, Auburn, and Tennessee.
If you put their power rating on a scatter plot against the rest of the SEC, there's a lot of white space between those like 2 dots at the top and everybody else. So
here's a headline for you. Does Carson Beck need to transfer to LSU to get the respect he deserves? Sound off in the comments.
Do you think that the winner of the Pac-12 title game will kind of snatch up, like vacuum up the votes of the loser?
Ooh.
Yes. Because right now, Daniels is the favorite.
Correct.
But like if Bo Nix blows out Washington.
And Heisman votes are split up geographically. So you have to assume that all of the West region votes are probably going to go to the quarterback who wins in the Pac-12 title game.
Speaking of selling, I would sell my Heisman vote if we could go down to 100 voters and get rid of the 800 voters who barely watch and watch one region, watch one team all season long. I'm not joking. If we could get it to where it made sense and you could truly get a better judge of who the best player in college football was from people who actually watch the sport, I would give away my vote in a heartbeat.
Just to be clear, Heisman Trust, because I know a lot of y'all do pay attention to the Cover 3 podcast. That is Danny saying you got to follow through on your side first, okay?
Yes.
He's not volunteering to give his vote up, okay? He's saying, I give my vote up as one of 700 voters that will also, lose their vote, and then we put in some kind of college football IQ test.
And then maybe I can get back in the final 100, but we'll have to all submit resumes again and kind of explain what we do. Last buy for me before the market closed. I am buying Tate Rodemaker as a quarterback for Florida State who could achieve everything Florida State could have with Jordan Travis. Let me explain. I think Florida State was tapped at where they could possibly go this season, and I think it was the playoffs. I think that was the pinnacle for Florida State. I do think there was a limitation on this roster to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Michigan, Georgia, the elite teams of the country. But I still think Rodemaker can take Florida State to the playoffs, and I think he can take them undefeated past Florida on the road through Louisville. And for people that think he's a different style of quarterback, he's not quite as electric as Jordan Travis, and he clearly doesn't have anywhere the experience or leadership, but he still is a really athletic quarterback who's got a cannon for an arm, and we've seen him twice now come off the bench, once in a much tougher position last year against Louisville on the road. Than it was this past season or this past weekend with Jordan Travis, going down against North Alabama. I know the game was tight, but he stepped up huge. But I still think Tate Rodemaker can take him. And I am selling anybody who says Florida State, undefeated ACC champ, is not getting into the playoff. That is complete hogwash. If they win out, they are in. It doesn't matter if the fifth string walk-on is playing quarterback. They're in if they run the table.
They deserve to be in.
No, they will be in.
They deserve to be in.
They will be in. They 100% will be in if they run the table.
The more I think about it, I think Danny is probably right on this. Like I was looking at some of the updated playoff odds.
And you're talking about the Tate side, right?
No, as far as like if they go undefeated, they'll make it. I was looking.
Well, look, we're spitting out permutations at this point that would just be like trying to create the most chaotic scenario, which I agree is fun, but ultimately not that productive. But yeah,
agree. No, I was just looking at the playoff odds, and they basically track with like FSU to win the next two games, roughly. There's some tolerance in there for them getting left out as an undefeated team. The thing is, like, if Louisville beats Kentucky, and Kentucky looks like an absolute mess right now, and they have to go play at Louisville, that's going to be a win over a team that the committee is, even if they don't want to, going to have to put at like number 7 in the country entering the game. So then I know the committee doesn't really follow its logic from week to week, but it will be pretty stark if they're like, yeah, you guys just beat the number 7 team in the country to go undefeated and win your conference, but you're out. It's going to be a weird argument to make.
Can I
Not
sell
one
something?
that I think they won't. They could make it. But
can I sell something, Danny?
Yes.
I wrote about it this morning.
Ooh, okay.
Oh boy.
While we're on the topic, I am selling the lie that we were sold to begin with. Does anybody notice? This is the last year of the 4-team playoff. We enter the final week of the regular season in a scenario in which 9 teams have a legitimate shot to be one of the 4 teams in the playoff. Meanwhile, if the 12-team format was in place this season, we would already know who about 8 or 9 of the teams that would be in the playoff no matter what happened. They lied to you and told you that a 12-team playoff would create more meaningful games. If it existed this year, there would be fewer. The Ohio State-Michigan game would be rendered practically meaningless. I mean, all these games, the Oregon State game, the Washington State game, the Pac-12 championship, it'd be meaningless. These teams would all be in the playoff. The only thing we would be arguing for right now is which G5 team deserves the bid the most. Oh, that's so exciting. That'll really get the casual fans going. They lied to you.
No.
Selling that lie.
Missouri, Arkansas would be a much more meaningful game this weekend than next year than it is now.
So that's why we have to have a
impact.
playoff. So a game between Missouri and Arkansas matters.
Yes.
Forget Ohio State,
year.
Michigan. Wait, we don't need that. Forget the SEC championship. We need the Missouri Arkansas game.
No, but it makes that game more compelling next year, because if Missouri loses that, they would be out of the playoff race. The same thing with Penn State, Michigan State. That has more meaning next year than it does this year. Those are meaningless games where no one's going to be watching them. I get the ones on Black Friday, we'll turn it on, but they have zero meaning. If they're playing for a playoff spot, it instantly makes those more intriguing games than they are this year.
Yeah, so what about the other 8 teams that have already clinched their spot in this 12-team field?
They haven't clinched.
Who was in the playoff last year? It was Georgia, TCU, Michigan, and
Ohio State.
Oh, Ohio State, right. So that game ended up having huge stakes because both teams, regardless of winner, still made it.
Correct. I'm talking about the lie that the new playoff will create more games. It just changes which games matter. It takes
you're wrong.
I do my 12-team playoff every week, right? Like the loser.
You project it. Yes.
Sure. But the loser of Ohio State, Michigan probably has to go face Georgia in their bracket and won't get a bye week.
Who did Ohio State face last year?
The what?
Georgia. Who did Michigan face the year before? Georgia. The funny thing about the college football playoff is 4 teams or 12, you're going to have to face Georgia.
Yeah, but you know what? Injuries happen. You'd rather face Georgia last than have to play them first.
You have to get there. And I'm sorry, Mizzou, even if you beat Arkansas, I'm going to sell your ability to get to Georgia in this 12-team playoff field.
All right.
Again, you're selling a bullshit lie. I mean, that's really all that any of this is.
I don't know what world you're living in, because I think this last weekend would be so much more compelling with 12 spots potentially at stake than we're only talking about the 7 or 8 teams that can make it now. Like every other team is kind of, well, what bowl are they going to, or what coach is going to be on the hot seat if they lose this game? Every other game in the top 20 all of a sudden becomes instantly more compelling because you could have that edge to get in the 12 teams.
There are no, not this year. You've got 5 undefeated teams and 4 more 1-loss teams in a 12-team field. Doing the quick math, that's 9. If you really want the LSU fans to stop hyping up Tradin Daniels' Heisman case and replace it with why LSU should be in the playoff field, I guess that's your kink. I'm not going to shame you for it, but that's the only thing that would be different right now.
I do think the fact that we have 5 undefeated power conference teams on November 20th is unique.
Playing for a bye. If they lose, they lose the bye.
This sample set, this is an anomaly year. It is not often that we have this many undefeated power conference teams this deep into the season. It creates an outlier to throw into whatever sort of projection or model that you want to have.
But you know what this has a higher likelihood of happening this year then? A 12 seed in the playoff having any shot of winning the damn thing.
So they only have a 12 seed because they want to avoid antitrust.
Then the 8th seed.
Well, but your beloved Penn State Nittany Lions, who are this powerhouse, you don't give them any chance in a 12-team playoff?
No, they've already had their chance. It was called Ohio State and Michigan, and they failed both. But you guys just want to give everybody more chances to lose. Congratulations. Yay.
I don't know. I saw that game in Columbus. Penn State could have won it. They play on neutral site. Maybe they win.
You sold them. You said they're going to be like the 5th best team in the Big Ten. Now you're trying to tell me they could beat Ohio State. Come on. Pick a lane, Chief.
I thought they were good according to you, so I was buying back in.